All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome into our transition webinar series. We are back for the month of December, titled Keeping the Job: What Happens After They're Hired, for those transition supports for any families or coaches, support teams, just kind of delving a little further into that job support, employment support, and also the role of the job coach. So, if you're coming back to us because you've been at these transition webinar series before, welcome back. And if you're a new first time viewer, welcome. We're glad you're here and thanks for being a part of the discussion. We'll be doing this two ways. One's on Zoom, where you can engage in that Q&A, but we also have Facebook Live going on right now. So hello from the interwebs. As always, we try to do this in a safe zone there a little bit, although I can't vouch for Facebook and Instagram being a safe zone, but they'll be as safe as we possibly can make them. Feel free to share your thoughts and ideas openly. You don't know what you don't know. And the same goes for us. If we don't know the answer to your question or we want to double check on something, make sure we're giving you the correct resources or the correct answers. We'll take a little bit of time. We want to make sure we're giving you the best information possible. And hopefully, you'll learn a little bit from us. We'll also get the chance to learn a little bit from you. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is our roadmap. What we tend to do is about 30 minutes of basic information based on a specific topic. Already this year, we've had different sort of webinar series on supports coordination or OVR, a little bit of employment support and what that looks like. We're going to delve a little bit further. And then we kind of take it off of the Facebook Live for some of those maybe more personal questions, and we'll have a little 15-minute Q&A afterwards for Zoom participants. So if you're watching this on Facebook or socials and you want to get into that Q&A access, I'm sure that Celia and one of our facilitators can go ahead and pop maybe a little bit of that Zoom link so that you can get into that Q&A, because we won't be broadcasting that to everybody. All right. Probably need to get into some introduction since I'm 2 minutes into this. My name is Nick Webster. I'm the Director of Educational Initiatives here with the ARC of Pennsylvania and the Include Me program. There you can see up on the screen a little bit of background about me. I've got a master's in drama therapy, so I'm a practicing drama therapist. But I started in adaptive physical education, actually, in New York City as I was pursuing the big Broadway lights. Started to come into the disability support field through education, and look at me now. Some past roles that I've held that might be relevant for why am I listening to this guy? Why am I spending my time on Facebook with this guy in front of me? Well, I've held some roles: job coach, job developer. I've also been a workplace readiness instructor, and a direct service provider. Currently, as many parts of folks on our team, I'm a trainer for our ACRE course, which helps folks get certified for employment supports for supporting folks with disabilities in their employment pursuits. And I'm also a pre-ETS instructor and facilitator for high school students, where we look at professionalism, professional skills, but also those soft skills, those communication skills, which we'll dive into in a bit more detail here in the next few slides. So what are we talking about today, Nick? What's going on? Well, here's our talking points for today. Some little pieces. Again, this is a micro training, so we're not going to dive too deep into all these subjects, but hopefully we just touch on some places to maybe inform you a little bit of something you're not familiar with, or get you thinking about other opportunities, possibilities, just feel a bit more comfortable with your role in supporting those employment supports teams. We're also going to dive into the job coach's role, what they do. They're not a one-stop shop here. They don't fix everything. And so kind of some insights into that as well. We're going to talk a little bit about breaking down complex tasks. In our world, we call it task analysis. But if you want to take off the smart glasses, it's really taking a more complex work task and breaking it down into smaller, more bite-sized steps. And then we're going to talk as well about fading plan and work mastery. For many folks, job coaching is not the end all. It's not to have that permanent support in place. For some folks, it is. But we're going to kind of talk a little bit about what that kind of looks like and what criteria need to be met as we hopefully get those employees with those supports and hopefully get them stabilized, comfortable, and confident in the job that they've already got. Before I move on to my next slide, the one piece I do want to highlight, we're not talking about in this training, we're not talking about how to get the job. We're not talking about mock interviews and cover letters, resumes, all that sort of stuff. In fact, if you remember from that title slide, we're talking about keeping the job. What about those skills and supports for after they're hired? So that's what we're really going to be focusing on here with our time left today. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Members of the team, a part of the support team, of course, our number one person-centered, right, is that worker, that employee that we are supporting, not only in their day-to-day supports, but also with their trajectory towards those career goals or what they might like to do with their working job and where they like to see themselves going. Of course, we also have that job coach or employment support specialist. They wear many different titles, but ultimately they're those on-site supports and sometimes off-site supports to really kind of help ease and pave the way and kind of help with any accommodations, modifications, or some additional training that might be needed for that employee to make sure they can master what those work tasks are and that they can perform and function at the level they need to sustain that employment. And hopefully they play their cards right, climb that ladder of promotion and additional responsibilities. Also, there's the coworkers and supervisors. Our term that we use for them is natural supports, the natural supports that exist already in that workplace, in that work environment, that workplace culture. So the job coach, right, they're getting paid to enhance and support, but if that employee wasn't there, that job coach wouldn't be there. I don't want to go ahead and call anybody out as an artificial support and enhanced support. Okay, maybe we'll go with that. But those natural supports are those people that already exist, those coworkers, those colleagues, supervisors, people that already make up that workplace. And of course, there is family and friends as well. Of course, they play an integral part in many different pieces, and we'll kind of break down different ways and how can I best serve the team? What's my role? How can I really kind of get into there? But let me first talk about job coach supports. So job coach, what do they do, Nick? What's all this about? We're kind of new here, or we haven't had great success with some job coaches in the past. Well, ideally, they're helping to onboard that folks. Now, I'm not saying that they are creating an onboard process for that supported employee. They are enhancing, they are supplementing, they are using already the structures and trainings that are already available, but maybe they're assisting, right? They're providing maybe some modifications, or they're allowing to expand a little bit to have an additional support to explain some of those small nuances or pieces. They're helping with the orientation so that person can feel comfortable as soon as possible with this new job. They're also helping mastering work tasks. And we're going to kind of show you one little tool, one small piece towards helping master those new work tasks, those work objectives that might provide some, might be a little challenging. It might require a little bit of additional support to make sure they're doing it in the right way. They also can look at sometimes navigation, how to get to work, and also how to navigate within that workplace. Of course, professionalism. Talked a little bit about it early on, but really looking at proper ways of professionalism, how to be proper professional from, dress habits, hygiene, all that sort of stuff, but also those different pieces down there with soft skills. And when I say soft skills, I mean those professional communication skills, which is ironic that I have communication as the first bullet point, but also looking at stress management, hitting deadlines, being resilient, getting and dealing with constructive feedback. Those are different ways that we can help kind of support or enhance that stress management that an employee might be experiencing for maybe the first time. We can also talk through some conflict resolution. Maybe it's a little bit of role play to understand when there's some interpersonal or inter-team conflict. How do we work through that? And maybe a little bit, I'm a theater person, so maybe trying out some different ways, listing the pros and cons, just really helping assess the situation so that it doesn't become a threat to their employment. Time management speaks for itself. Also, organization, decision making, but also teamwork opportunities and problem solving. Some of the folks that our job coaches might be supporting might not have had the opportunity or might not have developed a depth of working as an integral member of the team and needing to be depended on for the rest of the folks to do their job adequately. So, teamwork is another piece where we can just kind of help process, help guide, help redirect if need to, or prompt to help make sure that that employee is integrating themselves and being a valued, contributing member of the team. I talked about that big word that we like to use, task analysis. I use that interesting voice there. And sorry if you're just joining in, you're going to hear maybe a fair amount of those character voices. I don't always know when they're going to come out. Sometimes they do. But this task analysis is really just a fancy term for breaking down a complex job into smaller, more manageable steps. It's best when written in plain language, and it can be enhanced with images and visuals. If you don't know what plain language is, I highly invite you to go ahead and check out Google just to understand what is plain language, and that'll give you really kind of simplified, straight to the point, no metaphors, no fancy big automatopoeia words going through there. It's just really direct to the point, and hopefully is something that that individual can take on so that they can digest the information in a simplified, easy to understand way. It also can be enhanced with images and visuals as well, just to help. Maybe you're working with somebody whose reading skills are not maybe where reading the information is going to be the best way for them to retain and hold on to it. So images or visuals, pictures, preferably, especially at work when you can use actual pictures rather than clip art. Sometimes you don't have that, and you'll have to revert to clip art. But if you have actual picture representations of what they're going to be looking at or what the steps entail, that can also help with mastering some of those new skills. So I've got there at the bottom, you might be wondering, goblin.tool/to-do. Is Nick going to take us on a D&D extravaganza? No, not quite, not quite. This is just one AI tool that's free, that's out there that you can put into a internet browser, and it can kind of show you a little bit. I thought I would kind of guide you a little bit of what this looks like, breaking down or using a tool that helps break down a complex step into more manageable steps. So I went to goblin.tool/to-do, which helps break down those pieces so that you don't have to. And I typed in, what do I do when I'm confused at school? And I pressed enter. And it, of course, does the little computer whirring thing. But what it eventually does is gives me a list of steps that I can actually look at to try to take on breaking down that, what do I do when I'm confused at school? And as we're looking here at the screen there together, you can see some of these different pieces, identify what exactly is causing you confusion, ask a teacher or classmate for clarification, review your notes, take a moment to calm down and gather your thoughts. So there's all sorts of different pieces, but like with any AI tool, when we're trying to use it to support somebody, we need to go through a filter of our own human brain. So you're responsible for checking that AI's work, and specifically with Goblin tools, you're actually able to delete or reorganize based on your person that's learning this information. So really, it is a tool to start you off to get you there, but it's not just something you plug somebody into the front of the computer and let them go do it. There needs to be kind of that filter, that checks and balance system, so that you can make sure that the information that you're presenting is actually breaking down what you need to. So that's goblin.tools. If you're maybe wondering, but Nick, why does he have spicy peppers up on that screen? A spiciness level. No, I didn't call it that. That's from actually Goblin Tools. They have variations from 1 spicy pepper to 5 spicy peppers. And that's for how complex of a breakdown are you looking for? Just with this simple prompt, what do I do when I'm confused at school? If I do it at a spiciness level 1, it gives me 9 potential steps, and you can see most of those on the screen. If I wanted a spiciness level 5, that's going to potentially break down what do I do when I'm confused at school into 48 steps. little bit of overkill maybe for some of you. You might not need that many steps, but when we're kind of looking with other prompts, this might give you some insight into how many steps do I actually want to introduce to help us get to the mastery of this skill. Again, we're breaking down a complex task into smaller, more manageable steps. This is just one tool out there that can help kind of set you off or start you off in the right direction and get you there. If you haven't yet, you're just looking for maybe a little bit of another example and a bit of a chuckle, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go ahead and Google Exact Instructions Challenge PB&J. I put a screenshot there for you as well. So that's kind of the video that you're looking for. But breaking down tasks into smaller steps to be followed by somebody else is not the easiest thing, right? Teaching, instructing, coaching is not always as straightforward as folks assume it is to be. If you'd like to see some of the challenges with breaking down a complex task of, I don't know, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I highly invite you to check it out. If you've already seen it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And maybe it's time to review it, huh? So with setting a goal is also another piece, and it's also can sometimes be a little bit of a check for us on what are we ideally looking for. With self-determination, the idea of being in control of one's decisions and where one's going, there is this flawed thinking in our world that goal is always independence. They're always looking to be self-reliant without any supports, doing everything by themselves. And for some of the employees we support, that's important. That's where we're going towards. But for other folks, we're actually looking at interdependence, right? And what do I mean by interdependence? I mean actually relying on and supporting each other. An interdependent goal can be just as important as achieving those self-determined goals. That employee might not have to do everything for themselves by themselves. Instead, they can make or cause things to happen that improve the quality of their life with that support structure in place, with those supports identified. Building strong social connections that help them succeed. And we need to emphasize and kind of do a reality check on where we are with certain things. If we're headed towards a goal of independence, keep on keeping that lane and head down that way. But there also are goals that we can set and manage and maneuver that are interdependent goals that are just as valuable in supported employment when trying to achieve those career and work goals. Fading supports. This is really talking about when does the job coach start to fade out? A little bit like Homer there, if you can see that happening there. A fading plan is created to eliminate job coaching supports over time so that the worker feels comfortable and confident in their work tasks. Fading supports should be considered as early as day one of starting the new job. Most job coaches don't stay with that student forever. The goal is to help them become as independent or interdependent as possible. And that's kind of where we introduce this fading plan. Coaches might start off providing those supports daily, then kind of step back and start to fade their supports as that student gets more confident. Of course, if challenges come up later or regressions happen with that skill, that mastery of that task, supports can come back in for a short time. But we're really looking at identifying, let's get our supported employee to a place of stabilization where they're comfortable and confident in what they're doing, and let's start to fade those job coaching supports. A job coach is not a permanent crutch interwoven into that person's employment. It's really there to provide a temporary support that is faded in 30, 60, or 90 days. So a fading plan element, what goes into that? Well, first we have identified job tasks, right? What is that employee doing? What is the makeup of their day at work? It also looks at the levels of support needed to accomplish those tasks. It identifies and lists out how that support is given. It also gives a timeline to fade those supports or to empower and engage with those natural supports, those colleagues, those coworkers, those supervisors that naturally exist within that workplace. And a fading plan also has frequent communication to understand that worker's feelings, their comfort level, and what future needs might arise, right? The job coach is hopefully having active and open communication with the employee that they're supporting. So what does this look like? I'm just going to give you a little snapshot, a little taste, if you will, a little sample pack. Examples of the fading plan. You can see some of those different things. On the left side of this orange chart, we have those different job tasks, even small job tasks, right? It might not be their job to clock in, but it is part of the job. It's a job requirement that comes into there. They're not getting the paycheck just to clock into work, but if they can't clock in, then they can't start to accrue that time. So you can see on the left there some of those different job tasks, clocking in, putting on apron and gloves, preparing the baked beans, and cutting cake. And then you can kind of see in the middle column there the levels of support, whether that's independent, maybe requires minimal support, maybe significant support, or they're not performing the task. And also it shows kind of a progression there on the right. Where is the current level? So middle column, where did we start off? Current level, where are we at a little bit? And we can see that we haven't really made too much progression yet to put into place this fading plan. Also, minimal, significant. What does that mean? Great question. It's extremely important that the support levels are clearly defined and understood by the whole team. We talk in a different training, in a different world, we talk about descriptive writing, but really with these pieces, you're going to need to have another page that clearly defines and shows us what does minimal support look like. Is minimal support putting the gloves onto their hands? Is it just tying the back of their apron? Clearly define what it is, define what those steps are, and then start to game plan and strategize. Is there a natural support that could tie that apron? Is there assistive technology we could consider to help them with putting on gloves as they start their shift? And those pieces, once we identify and start to strategize, then we can actually even start to think about fading that job coach and fading those employment supports. So we don't have too much time left, but I have a few slides here. How can families support their student? Well, number one, they can help with routines, especially with preparing what happens before they go to work. In our pre-employment training, we talk a lot about morning routine, how early time management do they need to get ready, to feel comfortable, to have that breakfast, that meal, or to get enough sleep, helping with those routines and helping reinforce at home where that job coach is not going to be. They can ask questions, not just giving answers, right? It invites collaboration, it invites curiosity, and it also allows an openness of different perspectives. So that job coach, that employment specialist, that somebody with specific training can provide a little greater insight, and the family member isn't required to be all the roles at once. Facilitate role plays. What if? Go through scenarios, pros and cons of what happens, or how to maybe deal with a conflict at work. Those role plays, instead of jumping in and always providing what is the correct answer, role plays allow them to understand a little bit of the thought process and maybe develop some of those resiliency skills, develop some of those problem solving or decision making skills that are going to be vital in those situations where that worker is facing that conflict or that dilemma at work. Reinforcing the job coach lessons is going to be helpful too. That job coach isn't going to be around forever, and they're also not going to be helping out back at home after a shift. So reinforcing what those lessons are, having that communication with the job coach, the employment team is going to be important. And lastly, celebrate successes, making sure that we focus a little bit on the positive as well, positively reinforce and cheer what is working. I'm not saying you have to be a cheerleader all the time, but if you're not cheering on at one point, find some of those moments where you can positively reinforce. You can raise those confidence levels. Say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm noticing the impact of what you're doing. I can see the efforts that you're making. And, who doesn't like every once in a while hearing, I'm proud of you? That's an opportunity that you can reinforce in a way that no family, it's unique to that position. As well, you can share what works well for your student, your child, with that job coach. Keep that lines of communication open and let that job coach lead at work. Can't tell you the amount of frustrations that happen as a job coach when the family starts dumping on, well, I know what's right. Well, I know how this is going to be. Well, I'm just going to accompany and follow my son around at that workplace the whole day. Let that coach go ahead and take that and start to embrace maybe something that might be new or challenging for you with letting that coach kind of lead at work. Be patient with the learning process, easier said than done, and reinforce those teachings at home as we talked about. So, some key takeaways that I'd like you to keep as we kind of sort of wrap up here and get towards the end a little bit. Stay connected to that team, open lines of communication without being overbearing too much. We're curious, we're approaching with questions, and we're also acknowledging that that job coach, that employment support, they have specific training for supporting that employee on the job. But don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, approaching it from a state of curiosity rather than maybe from a lawyer behind the bench. Isn't it true that, no, not quite those leading questions, but if you have curiosity, you're trying to figure out what works or what's not working, a job coach and employment specialist should take that on since you and them are going to be working in a collaborative way to support your child or support that employee on the job. Focus on growth, not perfection. Again, easier said than done, but focusing on growth and celebrating that success. And ultimately, know that your support matters. You involving and collaborating and connecting, and also sharing some of that responsibility for training and the evolution of their work skills at that job site is going to be really important. As positive as you can be in this process, even when there's maybe some challenges, some setbacks, or something doesn't go the way that you thought it was going to go, try to keep that positivity as much as possible. It really does make a significant difference. So we're coming towards the end here a little bit. We have our Padlet. So if you're like, man, what is this, Nick? This is actually an opportunity for us to share some of the resources, some helpful clickable links, but also some recordings that we've had in the past, just showing you a little bit there of what it looks like. I promise I'll go back to that QR code as well. Should also hopefully be in our chat. But there you can find all sorts of different things, including if maybe you were interested in one of those past topics, you can check out our recordings bit there a little bit as well.